Greetings and welcome to Abstract Essay, where ideas take shape, like time thought, and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. She is a fellow podcaster, no other than Miss Danielle Perkins. Welcome, Miss Danielle on Abstract Essay. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yes, I am Danielle Perkins, but I like to go by the alias Danny Marie on all social media platforms. I am what you might consider a pandemic podcaster who has parlayed a hobby for podcasting into a passion. I believe podcasting is an art form, and for me, it was the catalyst to my healing. And so now I work with several podcasters, helping them launch, grow, and monetize and turn their passion into a profitable podcast as well. I have podcasting for newbies, I have Talk Tacoma, and more recently, another podcast called Host City Hustle. We're trying to help small businesses be in the know and be ready for the World Cup because we know that that is going to bring economic opportunities. But ultimately, I'm here today, Daniel, to share why I think podcasting is a platform for marketing, for media, and to build a community. So thank you for having me.
You are most welcome and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Thank you. As you said, we're going to talk about legacy through leadership, how educators and entrepreneurs can use media to tech and transform. So tell us what is all about.
Yeah, so first and foremost, I said before I was a pandemic podcaster. I know that even when it comes to educators, there were a lot of people during the pandemic that had to pivot. A lot of people who retired from quote unquote teaching in an institution, and a lot have went to taking what they know as teachers, as educators, as coaches and consultants, and moved into podcasting. Podcasting is still a way to establish yourself as an expert in your respective field. It's still an opportunity to teach. It's still a way to build community. It's a marketing strategy. And a lot of people that I work with said that that pivot, where it was not working in an institution, still has allowed them to teach and educate at scale. And I think that we oftentimes get very centered and very narrow in our thinking because we feel like to teach, you have to be in an institution. But that is not true. You can actually reach more people doing things like podcasting. So I'm eager to dive into what that looks like. I can tell you that it is very simple to start a podcast. A lot of us are already doing some of the fundamental things. If you have a social media account, if you have a phone and a laptop, if you have a microphone and access to headphones, it's as easy as that to put together a podcast. Now, maintaining it is a little different, but at least to get started, you just need those very basic things. And again, you're already doing a lot of this stuff already when you show up every day online on social media. That is kind of an extension of podcasting.
Indeed, and the word legacy can feel heavy and final, Miss Danielle. How do you define a living legacy as something built day by day in the classroom or in the boardroom rather than something left behind at the end?
I don't know about you, Daniel, but I know for me, a lot of who I am as an adult today stems from how I was raised and who I was as a child and adolescent. So a lot of it has to do with the mentorship, the teachers, the parents, the leaders that were in my life as a child that left an imprint. And that to me is a part of who I am and a part of legacy building. Some people may have left a good taste in my mouth, some people not so much. But I like the question and the framing of the question because legacy does seem like it's this thing that is so far fetched. But indeed, you can leave an imprint on someone today just by having a regular exchange with the person. Now, I had a guest on a podcast a few years ago, and he used this word in terms of how he likes to show up on social media. He likes to think of it as leaving a digital footprint. You know, we're no longer in the era where we're keeping a photo album of pictures. We're storing it all online on our social media accounts. And so with the podcast, with one episode at a time, you have an opportunity to store away this archive of information and education, store away an archive of these monumental historic events, or if it is something as simple as recipes, you have an archive of recipes through your episodes. And so, through an episode a day or a week, or however you upload, you are able to leave something, leave an imprint, leave a digital footprint just simply by recording an episode and leaving that on the cloud somewhere and sharing that to your social media, uploading that to Apple or Spotify or YouTube. That is a part of legacy building. And then when you look up, I have a friend who's been podcasting for 15 plus years. You can imagine, first of all, how much storage that is, but second of all, how many conversations, how many breakthroughs, how many people and guests he's had on this platform. That is relationship building, that is legacy. And when you're no longer here, your family members and friends can always go back to revisit that archive of information. So you can change lives simply by showing up and recording one episode at a time. And you can look up 5, 10, 15 years from now and be proud of your legacy from the episodes that you recorded, especially if you record and you're extremely intentional with the content that you put out, meaning that you started with a plan, you have a mission, you know exactly who you're talking to, who you show up for your podcast. Those are the people who you are showing up for and consistently working towards helping them get past whatever their issues are, helping them solve a problem. That is legacy building.
A legacy building indeed. And its core, Miss Danielle, this topic connects the passion of an educator with the drive of an entrepreneur. What is the fundamental shared leadership trait that both must possess to build something that lasts?
You know, I want to be cliche and say you need to have emotional intelligence and all of these things. You need to have the EQ. But I think it's what, at least for me, what people oftentimes say about me and how I show up as a leader is that I show up and I'm consistent. Whether sometimes I have my kids with me in the background when I'm trying to do a live stream for some of my closest community members who are in my podcast group, or if I'm showing up and I'm doing so many different odd jobs and I'm trying to mill piece everything together. I think showing up and being relentless, showing up and proving to myself every day that I can push past barriers, push past thresholds, push past circumstances. Just in this year alone, and I'm being fully transparent here, just this year alone, I've been through a personal, and this is a disclaimer for your audience, but I've been through a miscarriage. Three relatives of mine passed away, and my house flooded. And that was just the top of this year. But I kept showing up. And I mean, the reason why I started podcasting even 5 years ago, Same situation. I was met with a difficult circumstance. Podcasting was a space for me where I could just let it all out. I had a space where I can talk about the things that I was going through. Showing up has been my form of leadership, showing up for people who champion me every day, who see the relentless grind, who see the willpower and the strength to keep going on, to keep fighting, even when it's difficult. I know that people are looking at me and they're encouraged by my movement and just the fact that I show up consistently, whatever that looks like for the day. I show up and I give every day my all. And that to me is the core of a leader who is relentless, resilient, and consistent in everything that they do, no matter what things they're up against, especially in these difficult times in our economy here in the US. A lot of people are fatigued. A lot of people don't know where their next meal is coming from, their next dollar is coming from, but we still have to show up. And I show up every day for the people who look up to me and see that as a podcaster, we can change lives through our stories and storytelling, sharing our personal anecdotes, our personal struggles. We're impacting, and I think that is the core of a leader.
A core of a leader. Educators are often measured by test scores and entrepreneurs by quarterly profits. How do you resist those short term metrics to focus on long term, often measurable impact of your work?
Mm. Well, as a podcaster, I would have to say number one, I use my 5 P's framework. So we look at the 5 P's of a podcast. But I think also to measure your success, it's very important that you're looking at your analytics. Again, I'm speaking to podcasters, I'm speaking to educators, teachers who want to create a legacy through podcasting. So you're looking at your analytics, meaning that you're looking at your dashboards for your podcast platforms every week or every month or every quarter. And you're checking to see your downloads. You're checking to see where people are tuning in from. What popular episodes did you get the most downloads? You're looking at all of those things and you're constantly assessing. And then you're asking your audience, you're engaging with your audience and you're getting their feedback. What things did they love about the episode? Did they listen for the entire duration of the episode? All of those things is how I measure my success as a podcaster. And same thing with an educator. You're looking at, you're going through your mm, um, quarterly, I can't think of the word right now, but you're meeting with your staff and the faculty, and they're giving you the performance metrics, they're giving you feedback, and you're looking at all of those things and you're assessing, was I improving from the last time I had one of these things? Your 10-year, whatever the case, did I improve? Is the feedback that I'm getting good? Are the parents happy, when they get the conferences, when they do the conferences? Am I getting good feedback from the people around me? If I was to speak to a podcaster again, I would say, ask your audience, are you getting the ratings? Are you getting the reviews? Those are the ways that you can determine the success and whether you're still on track towards building a long, sustainable brand. So back to my 5 P's, I measure things like podcast plan, your performance, your promotion, and those are the types of things that we're looking at when we look at our self evaluation metrics.
Interesting, Miss Danielle. So, what can entrepreneur obsessed with scalable growth learn from a teacher who focuses on nurturing one student at a time? And conversely, what can an educator learn from entrepreneur mindset?
So I think that when it comes to whether they're looking at for their students, I am a homeschooling mama, and I actually just today oof, decided to put my kids in school. because as a homeschooling mom, I was looking at my child's behavior at home. I realized that for my oldest son, he would have outbursts. It was hard for him to be engaged here at home in the things that we were doing. And basically, he had hit a plateau. He was disinterested with the things that we were doing at home, and it was showing in his behavior. Similarly, I think teachers should assess the fruit of their labor, the children's behavior. Are they all showing or performing well in their test scores? Is their behavior a demonstration of how well and how conducive the learning environment is and how well the learning experience is for them? Are they acting out and misbehaving constantly? I think those are indicators of whether or not the student is getting what they need from you. And then when they're not, it's important for you to assess where it is all stemming from. If you have a child like me who's very vocal, you can engage in conversation. Hey, what's going on with you today? What things made you happy? What things made you upset? Tell me about your feelings. What did you learn? What are you feeling like? Those are the types of questions that you're asking, and then you're assessing in behavior. And sometimes it's not always outwardly displayed. Sometimes, again, it's stuff that they're dealing with internally. If they shut you out or their behavior just seems a little off, pick up on those cues. I think so often we have all of these daily demands, even as teachers, when you're frustrated with your overworked, busy schedules and you have so many children in your classroom that we are not as intentional and we are not as observant and we can't spend that important necessary time for each child. So sometimes we don't pick up on the cues right away. But I think when you are in real time experiencing a kid lashing out, screaming, being irate, not listening, seems disinterested in everything that you're doing, those are just those small cues to let you know that something could be off. And the behavior will always be a demonstration of if you're doing something right and if there's areas for improvement. And then the last part of your question, I don't remember, you'll have to restate it.
Well, Miss Danielle, let's go to the next question. Legacy is not built by a lone visionary. How do you identify and empower legacy carriers within your organizations or classroom, the people who will carry the mission forward?
Yeah, so like we're building out a podcast psychology program. And I know that name is like, what? But I think a lot of legacy also starts with mindset. Mindset in terms of, again, the things that we're met with on a daily basis, things that we don't even speak about outwardly, things that we're battling internally. So we're doing a 12-week program and we're going to be having these cohorts where we actually sit down with one another and we talk about things like imposter syndrome, talk about things like what does it mean to show up and give things your all, your very best, even when you feel overwhelmed with everything else that you have going on in life. And so we're going to have those very hard conversations around mindset, around the psychology of podcasting, around the art of podcasting. And when you get to the crux of what's happening here mentally, that is the foundation for building on something that is when you work out all of the mental issues and the mental workload and you're able to address and confront all of those things, that is the foundation for healthy lifestyle, healthy living. When you can speak outwardly about, hey, like I just spoke with a client today who had worked for the post office for 20 plus years. And it would be easy to just focus on the podcasting stuff. But instead, I'm asking her, how are you feeling? I know what just happened to you. You are probably overwhelmed, wondering what's next. How are you feeling? Doing those personal check ins. So when you are great mentally, your mind is free mentally and emotionally, and you're in a good, healthy mental state, everything else becomes easier. Not necessarily that things won't happen, you won't be triggered, but it just becomes a little easier. And so that's why working on the mentality, the mindset, the psychology is extremely important.
How do you build a culture that cultivate you? What are the key elements of a culture that ensures the why behind the work remains intact long after founder or the iconic teacher is gone?
Mm. Cultivating you, it's different for all of us, right? And like when it comes to the podcast, one of the things we teach is anchoring your why. What is the thing that motivates you? What is the thing that lights the fire in your belly? What is the thing that activates you? And if you can't articulate that, you cannot convey that, then it goes back to a question you asked earlier, doing that self evaluation, that self assessment.
For the educator listening who feels trapped by bureaucracy or the entrepreneur feeling crushed by the pressure of the next funding round, what is the one tangible step they can first take this week to start leading with legacy in mind?
Mm. Always, if you can, in the beginning of your day or the end of your day, it's something so simple, things that we hear all of the time, but we often don't actually apply. Write in your journal and check and do a self evaluation check, do a mental check. I had an opportunity to listen to one of your former episodes, um, and she said something similar. Always assessing and evaluating, and give yourself that time to be and sit with self. Be okay sitting with self, eliminating any distractions. If you need to do some breath work or whatever the case, you can go to YouTube and find out some cool different tips and tutorials, desk yoga, breath work, but journaling and doing all of that self meditation 5, 10, 15 minutes out of the day. And I think just purging yourself, journaling, and checking in with yourself is extremely important before you are inundated with all of the daily demands. Do a self check and then make a habit every week, every month to go back and revisit those pages in your journal. And how was I feeling on this day? Did the circumstances change? If not, what can we do differently next time? So maybe even, now we have the privilege of AI, artificial intelligence, maybe even share some of that with AI or a chat GPT or a Gemini and get some feedback and then say this was what I was feeling. This was my self check-in for the week. I did 7 different journal entries. Tell me what I can do moving forward from here. And I think doing that constant self assessment to make sure you feel like you're still on track. Because so often we can get into this rat race and just forget to check in with ourselves. And something as simple as doing a journal entry can help us make sure we're constantly improving, working on that personal wellness, personal development.
Interesting, Ms. Danielle. But before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my baby podcast, Bible versus 101, Law 101 and Mental Health 101, Book 101 review in first or fifth season, and Comedy 101 in third season, and Food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, Love Letters as well as on fourth season, as well as Movie 101 review and Music 101, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its second season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Ms. Danielle, looking ahead, what is the next frontier for you? Having achieved so much, what does a building for tomorrow mean for you personally?
Yeah. First of all, that is amazing. There was a point in time where I was doing like 8 podcast shows at the same time. So kudos to you just to show that you've successfully been able to scale and do so many different podcasts. So, what's
Thank
next
you.
for me? I want to help 100 podcasters with their platforms. We're going to be doing the podcast psychology program, as I mentioned, at the start of 2026. And we're also just inked a deal with a big media company where we're now helping indie podcasters start their own live podcast tours. So those things are next for me professionally. Personally, I am always working on self. And so I am doing a lot of the things that I talked about in terms of like writing things out and assessing where I am at. Personally, I'm looking forward to doing more self care now that my kids are going to go off to school. I've been homeschooling for like 5 years. So I'm looking forward to what I can do now that I have a lot of free time. And I'm taking it one step at a time.
Yes, one step at a time, baby steps. And Miss Danielle Perkins, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your podcast, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yes, thank you. You have a website, at least on my end. I see that my website is here displayed. So visit the site. It leads you to our ebook, our newsletter on Substack, the podcast itself, Podcasting for Newbies on Facebook. We have a group and we have the podcast. And the website is plan2podcast.com. PLANTOPODCAST.com. Thank you, Daniel, for your time.
No worries at all. Yes, people, support Miss Danielle Perkins because if you support her, for sure, more and more podcasts, fellow podcaster will rise. So, Miss Danielle, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Modicom people, see you soon.